Hey there friends, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and I've got a couple books today that I think you're going to absolutely love. I really love them, and I think you will too. And also, they are perfect reads for this time of year. So I know I talked about some spooky books that were a little bit spooky last week, and I'm going to do the same thing again next week too, on the week leading up to Halloween. But maybe you are really just want to read something that's seasonal that doesn't fall into either of those categories. I generally prefer spooky books over scary, although I do love a good scary book as well. But maybe you're not into either of those things. Maybe you just want to enjoy the season and not be scared or spooked out at all. Maybe you're just looking for some kind of like cozy story that makes you just feel really warm and good inside. Maybe it would be really great to pair it with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a scone or a croissant. Now I'm making myself hungry. But anyway, there are plenty of books that are like that are just really great seasonal reads that don't really fall into any of the spooky or scary categories. They're just really nice comfort reads. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those today, and hopefully you will find something that you really like as well. So the first one I want to talk about is the X Hex by Erin Sterling. The X Hex. Now the thing that's really interesting about Erin Sterling is this is actually a pseudonym for Rachel Hawkins. And you may or may not be familiar with Rachel Hawkins. She is actually an author that writes really good thrillers. She's got two, I think, out so far that are just absolutely phenomenal. I loved both of them. And she's also written some paranormal romance sort of stories for young adults as well. So this was a sort of new type of story. I don't really know why she went by the pseudonym, but when I found out who it really was, I was excited because I really like Rachel Hawkins' work, or Erin Sterling. So what is this book about? So this is about a town called Graves Grove, and witchcraft is real, magic is real, and Vivi is this young woman who goes through this terrible breakup. Well, when she's young. So, what do you do when you go through a bad breakup? You eat a lot of ice cream, you take a lot of bubble baths. Well, if you're a witch, you also put a hex on your terrible ex-boyfriend, right? Because nothing could go wrong there, right? Sure. So that is what Vivi does. She puts a hex on her ex-boyfriend named Reese, and she doesn't really think anything's going to come of it. She does it on this like old crappy candle that she has. It's not anything like a real ritual or a real spell. It's just something that her and her best friend kind of come up together with when they're a little bit drunk and, trying to cheer Vivi up. Well, now it's years later, and Reese has come back to this town. And ever since he's come back, there are all these really terrible accidents that keep happening. Some of them maybe even putting his life in jeopardy. And then she realizes that, oh my gosh, this actually worked. This hex I put on my ex, and I can't believe it, but now I have to figure out how to fix it. So her and Reese have to work together to try to undo this mess that she's done years ago. Of course, this is definitely got some romance in it. It is a very sweet, adorable story. It does have a happy ending too, of course. I just need to let you know that up front. So this is a really great story about this town where magic is real and there are witches in it, but they're not scary. It's hilarious. I laughed so hard reading this. I loved it to pieces. It was phenomenal. And of course, who can't identify with that, right? With having an ex-boyfriend and feeling really crappy about it, but at least you're not a witch and cause all this mayhem, right? There's also there's a talking cat in it. There's just all this really crazy, hilarious stuff. Definitely worth a read, and a really wonderful read for this time of year specifically. So this is called The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling. She's got a new one out as well. I can't remember what the name of it is, but she's got another like sort of romantic comedy sort of story, probably set in the same world as well. Ex Hex. So the next one I want to talk about is a book that I absolutely fell head over heels in love with. I just recently finished it, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. It was actually on my to-be-R list for over a year. I saw it like winter last year and thought, oh, I really want to read this, but I'll wait till it gets into, a September, October. So this time finally rolled around. I picked it up and I fell in love with it. So that book is called Cackle by Rachel Harrison. Cackle. I love the title of this book. I love the imagery on the cover. It is so cool. So this is a story, this is about witches too. Both of these are about witches today. So this is a story about a young woman named Annie who was living in New York City with her boyfriend of, I think it was like 10 years. He breaks up with her, and not really being able to still live in the city on her own, she ends up taking this job upstate, kind of in this like really small, like remote town, as she's a teacher, high school teacher. So she goes and moves to this town. She is absolutely just depressed. She's super depressed about this breakup. She thought her and her ex-boyfriend are going to be together forever. And she's just feeling really torn up about it. Her life just doesn't really seem to be going where she thought it was going to. But then she meets Sophie, and Sophie is this woman in the town where she moved to, that they become friends. And Sophie seems to be everything that Annie wants to be. She is beautiful and glamorous, and she's got her life together, and everybody respects her, to the borderline of maybe being a little bit afraid of her or weirded out by her, which comes into play later in the story. But she's just confident and just exudes this charisma that Annie desperately needs. And she can't understand why Sophie wants to be friends with her, but she does become her friend. They become really, really close. Well, then all of a sudden things start happening that are a little bit unexplained. So she's having trouble with a student in school, and she tells Sophie about it, and Sophie's like, oh, don't worry, I'll curse him for you. And Annie's like, okay, sure, thanks. And then the next day, something happens, an incident in the class where it makes Annie go, what is happening? There's things like that, and the fact that Sophie just seems very old and timeless, but still is beautiful like a young woman. There's all these things, and it's coming to be sort of obvious to Annie that Sophie's a witch, and what is she going to do about that? Is this something that she needs to run away from, or is this something she's going to embrace in her life? And just because Sophie doesn't do anything bad to Annie. She wants to be her friend and be there for her. So she's got a couple decisions that she has to make. This book is really, really awesome. It is such a great story about female friendship, about confidence, self-confidence, and just basically standing up for yourself. Because Annie is kind of a little bit of a doormat. I felt so bad for her, and I really identified with her a lot, in a lot of respects throughout this story, because she kind of just lets things happen to her and doesn't really stand up for herself or try to change her circumstances at all. But with Sophie's influence, she does. She does start to do those things. And she starts to realize that, you know what, maybe it doesn't matter that she's a witch. Maybe it doesn't matter that magic is real, because this is a really great positive influence in my life. I really thought this book was phenomenal. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's also hilarious. So Annie's inner monologue at times is so, so, so funny. It had me cracking up. And there's this one scene where she goes on a blind date that this teacher at work sets up with her, like a double date sort of thing, blind date. And it goes so horrifically wrong, but the inner dialogue that is going on inside Annie's head during this date is so hilarious. I think it has to be my favorite scene in the whole book. So this book is great. Again, there's some witchcraft and witchy stuff, but it's not spooky or scary at all. It's just a really great story about friendship, particularly between two women. And like I said, self-confidence, believing in yourself, and knowing that you can do anything you put your mind to. Great story, really great author. I have to read more stuff by her now that I've experienced this. I highly, highly recommend it. Cackle by Rachel Harrison. Well, that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope that both of these books sound really awesome and they sound like something you want to check out. If so, please feel free to come check them out from Farmington Community Library. Also, please give this video a like, and thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much, friends.